Hi everyone, my name is Rudy Lundgren, or Tashi Delek, everyone. This is the traditional greeting in some parts of Asia, along with sticking your tongue out and clapping. Any guesses as to where in Asia? Here's another hint. In other parts of Asia, a similar greeting would be Namaste. If you haven't guessed by now, I've chosen to discuss Tibetan Buddhism. Tibetan Buddhism is not surprisingly most practiced in Tibet, with many followers also living in Bhutan, China, Mongolia, Nepal, well as some parts of Himalayan India. It is important to note that Tibetan Buddhism has many traditions originating from traditional Buddhism. However, they also incorporate many traditional Tibetan beliefs and gods and deities. The most identifiable of these practices is Tulku, which is also known as incarnate Lama. This is the belief that compassionate teachers are reborn over many lifetimes. These leaders are identified when they are children, and the most notable of the Tulkus is the Dalai Lama. Over the course of time, Tibet was occupied by a Chinese regime that was not supportive of them, which in turn caused the Dalai Lama to go into exile in 1959. This helped raise awareness and interest from people around the world when it occurred. Tibetan Buddhism has three main tenets, which are as follows. The three universal truths, with the first one being Aryamagga, which means nothing is lost in the universe. Anicca, everything changes or impermanence. Karma, which is the law of cause and effect. The second tenet of Tibetan Buddhism is the Four Noble Truths. The truth of the cause of suffering, the truth of the end of suffering, and the truth of the path that leads to the end of suffering. More simply put, suffering exists. It has a cause, it has an end, and it has a cause to bring about its end. The third Tibetan Buddhism tenet is the Noble Eightfold Path, which is right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Tibetan mythology and folklore has some recognizable tales that are infamous to this day. None more so than the tale of the Yeti or abominable snowman, as opposed to some belief that tale depicts an ape-like tree creature with long arms and a strong torso with reddish-brown hair, and not a bear-like creature. The belief is that the Yeti is an animal, but with a sometimes human-like ability to follow Dharma. Dharma is the ability to know the difference between right and wrong, and the universal truth emphasizing the right behavior and social order. More simply, it can be described as a way of understanding what's right from wrong. Regarding death, Tibetan Buddhists have unique views and rituals. Unlike many religions around the world, they do not practice burial or cremation. Instead, they practice sky burials. This process involves taking the body to special monasteries, then chopping the dead body into several pieces along with being dismembered. The body is then brought to a special area and laid out for vultures to feed on. To some, this may seem barbaric. However, one must understand the reasoning behind this age-old practice. Mostly, this is seen as a final act of charity and compassion by the person to facilitate their body returning to the earth. And it also refers to as jatar, which means final act of kindness. Also, keep in mind where Tibet is. It is high in the Himalayan mountains. So it's due to the altitudes of trees and flammable foliage, it's scarce to just bury. And also the elevation of the mountains creates a firm and difficult ground to bury people under. So sky burial pretty much is the best option in their situation for their land. Currently, There are over 1,000 sky burial sites around Tibet, and in the neighborhood, 100 people that can conduct these ceremonies. Post-death is when Tibetan Buddhists truly separate themselves from other forms of Buddhism. As stated earlier, when discussing the Dalai Lama, they believe in reincarnation. However, one discrepancy between Tibetan and other Buddhists is that Tibetans believe there is time of limbo, or bardo, that can last up to 49 days before reincarnation starts. The only way to stop this never-ending cycle is through attaining nirvana. Nirvana can be described as when one achieves enlightenment and no longer has any worldly cravings. So in conclusion, for my presentation, Tibetan Buddhism is a unique and interesting faith. Personally, I feel the religion encompasses many beliefs which are relevant today, such as karma. Pretty much you hear this saying all the time, what goes around comes around. The depth of one's character is not judged on material possessions, but rather on the purity of one's heart and the acts they perform over the course of their life. Unfortunately for their followers, many people around the world didn't take an interest in helping preserve these people's faith and beliefs until the mid to late 19th century, when the Dalai Lama went into exile in 1959. It is my belief that everyone should have the universal right to practice whatever faith they wish. That being said, Tibetan Buddhism is an interesting faith with some of the most compassionate and adherent followers in the world. The fact that Tibetan Buddhists are among the most adherent followers of religion globally speaks volumes.